Hello and welcome to Tax Manthan, a special episode of Simply inTAXicating. The global taxation canvas has seen as many colors in the last few years as it never witnessed in the last 100 years. If we look at the digital economy, for most of the tax jurisdiction, it's a big challenge to tax the growing footprint of digital economy. Secondly, the OECD-led campaign to reduce the abuse of tax treaties, it has gained significant ground in the recent years, particularly after the BEPS. For most of the tax jurisdiction, taking certain legislative steps to prevent abuse of tax treaties, it's becoming a global reality now. India has also taken several steps in the previous budget, in this year budget also. Secondly, the indirect tax landscape has also undergone a major change. It's a tectonic shift. From the traditional form of taxation like sales tax and central excise, it has moved to GST now. India and UAE, these are two new joiners to the VAT world. There are many issues, of course, in India, which we find, of course, UAE, we will talk about UAE experience and Malaysia for that matter. We will touch that aspect also, confronting serious issues on the GST front. We have 4 domain experts with us who are going to touch national and international issues. We have Mr. Vinod Jain, founder INMACS, CFO World, then the founder of Chartered Accountants Society, founder of many such bodies which are contributing to this generation and evolution of knowledge. We have Mr. Rishabh, co-founder, GSTStreet, technology guy. He is going to touch that. He is the actual villain of all the taxation reform. He is going to touch that, how technology is actually going to play a critical role or a positive role, of course. Then we have Monish Panda, founder, Monish Panda and Associates. We have Clarence Ellis, international domain experts in indirect taxes. So let me start with Mr. Vinod Jain. So please tell us, particularly this, the growing footprint of the digital economy, the whole world, in fact, it has been one of the very powerful engines of growth also for most of the economies. But for most of the government, it's a big challenge, how to tax the digital economy.
I think the ultimate challenge is arising out of the legacy issues, because legacy, maybe when double taxation avoidance agreements were negotiated, nobody knew that buying and selling of services, buying and selling of media, buying and selling of data can happen electronically also, because most of the trade was happening physically. If the goods are going out, coming in, or maybe technology is coming in or going out, even that was also happening physically. So the DTA, the mutual agreements between various countries are primarily attuned towards that. So this is, became loud and clear in last 10 years primarily, and more clear in last 3-4 years, when we see the data coming in, when we see the films coming in, when we see the YouTubes of this world, Netflix of this world, and all kind of people actually know selling data in India. I'm talking from Indian perspective, making tremendous amount of money, people like Google and maybe everybody. Then of course e-commerce came in. When e-commerce came in, I think that created further technological issues as well as how to tax issues. Those issues were direct tax as well as indirect tax issues both. I think last 2.5 years, 3 years when electronic commerce has been being. So even on indirect tax side, who should tax this sale? Whether the e-commerce portal should be taxed or should not be taxed was all debated. But I think now possibly we're moving towards a reasonable solution, because internationally as well as nationally there has been a great debate. And as understood by Government of India, they decided last year to bring this equalization levy as the starting of the whole thing as far as direct tax is concerned. And then the latest initiative of significant economic presence, which tells you that significantly you are available here, whether you are physically here or not, you are bound to pay taxes to us. And I think the next step will be, of course, also after the double taxation avoidance agreement will come, then when they want to really tax everything, I think there are certain things which are still pending on double taxation avoidance agreement, because ultimate trial is if you are earning money from a particular country, you should pay their share. You know, the famous judgment in Morgan Stanley's case of the Honorable Supreme Court, when they talk of transfer pricing, they said you should actually charge tax to the extent you are contributing in this country. But I think in that judgment, I think it did not cover the realities of the today's electronic commerce. And accordingly, you know, most of those American companies, British companies, other European companies, they started, you know, I will not call that evading taxes, but legitimately, legally avoiding taxes in India. And I think that has definitely created a big challenge for the Indian economy. And accordingly, the initiatives have just began. And I think the change in the business connection definition and the change in the tax definitions itself.
Right.
And I see a major change coming in when the new Income Tax Act, which the Prime Minister Modi has actually given the mandate recently, a committee is working of 6 experts. I think once that comes in, I think you'll see a lot of conceptual changes, maybe 3-4 months from now.
Yes, certainly, maybe the next year. But
in the GST, in any case, but before the GST and this coming in, if you see the Companies Act 2013 also brought a major change.
Yes.
You know, they said in case you're doing anything in India, whether electronically or otherwise, you should register your here yourself.
Yes, but we'll touch that issue, sir. Separate thing. We'll touch the Companies Act. Very interesting point.
That's right. But that is tells you why this was come primarily from taxation reasons.
Absolutely.
Because once you actually register yourself, then of course you are bound to. But I think the government could not really push people to register here, in spite of this lobbying there, because they are all jurisdiction issues, whether you can, the Companies Act 2013 can really touch them. So ultimately they came with this direct significant economic presence and equalization levy issues. So I think we are in it.
Maybe Mr. Clarence could, guide us or tell us a little more about the tax avoidance issues.
Right.
It's a serious issue not only for direct tax,
for sure,
but indirect tax.
I mean, if you go back and look at the US, I mean, the US always had nexus with any business connected with the US. I mean, this sort of SEP is almost there already. And they were pushing it where anytime you did business with the US, even if you were outside, completely non-resident, they said you have a connection.
You have a connection,
and you were taxed. And they're very strict about it, very prescriptive. So it's new for this part of the world, but the US has always practiced this. And I think paying the fair share, as you rightly said, is the correct thing at the end of the day. And I think that's what's important and how it needs to be done.
But who is going to accept it? Who is going to decide it?
I think
that is the tussle.
I agree.
At the global level.
I agree. And I guess it has to be governments who have to push this because they have the authority, because they have the sovereign authority.
Right.
And I think in all of this, guidance and regulations must be clear.
Although India
I think we are moving towards multilateral negotiations now.
Which is an important thing, right? The MLS.
Although on the tariff side, now multilateral has started giving again way to bilateral treaties.
Correct.
So we really don't know what will happen because I think multilateral has its advantages, but it has serious disadvantages, creating a consensus among so many people because it's very difficult.
This is the problem, right?
So
absolutely.
Maybe I think it will have to be a mix of multilateral and bilateral both. The experience of India in last 2 years of amending their treaty with Singapore, as well as with Mauritius, and also with Cyprus.
Yes.
Very, very fast, very quick actually expose us that maybe bilateral treaties are not that difficult as we used to think. It is a question of you require definitely a clear-cut will and understanding, and maybe at the right level you need negotiation, not at the bureaucratic level alone. Maybe at the head of the state level, it happens much faster.
Who can take a decision.
And give and take position. For example, Mauritius was very clear that they are not going to negotiate it.
Right.
But I think head of state level the discussion, I think two discussions itself actually broken the ice, and I think that's where we are. Actually.
Right, absolutely. But do you really think that OECD is the right forum?
OECD is
for this kind of changes.
To me, look at it. OECD is basically is a body that just tells you what to do. They cannot enforce. They have no powers to enforce, right? And you can see they don't like any unilateral decisions. The Google tax in the UK, people they don't like that because they think the world can bring it all together, and that's very nice at the macro level. But I think at the micro level, bilateral treaties, I think, are quite, because that's what happened with Mauritius, right? If you wait for everybody, it won't work.
OECD typically is an organization of the big
five.
Big five, I call them, or big seven at best you can call them.
Yes.
And I think the countries which are emerging like India, China, Brazil, and other people who are becoming important, even South Africa for that matter.
Right.
On the international scenario, I think I am a very different person. I don't think we'll have a say in OECD because that's a club of few people, and they will not allow you to really come in.
Right.
I think there is now a very good case that you create international forums by initiatives of BRICS and the things like.
Right.
Once you have these international forums, one international forums, another international forum, possibly you can still have that negotiation.
Right.
I think that is the international diplomacy. I call it economic diplomacy, which is going to.
No, for sure, and that's why the United Nations was also involved because they said they had a better reach than the OECD, right? And they have parallel legislation and things like that too. And that's the issue. I think the world is complex and not everybody is going to agree. So bilateral, I think, is the way to go forward.
Ultimately, this new initiative which has come, I think that is what India has said. If you see memorandum of changes,
Right.
that will be renegotiating the double taxation avoidance agreement beside MLI in any case.
Correct.
Right.
So that, but the negotiation will happen faster because once it has OECD endorsement or BAPS
Right.
kind of agreement with being in place, I don't think negotiations is going to really take much time.
Correct.
I see from time frame angle maximum a year and a half from now.
Which is not bad, huh?
Huh,
Which
this
is
should-
not
this
bad
should
at
be, I
all.
think.
pretty fast.
The people concerned have been actually advised to aggressively go for it.
Right, right. So there's will from the government.
Will from the government is
Which is
committed.
very
They-
important.
They don't want to postpone anything for tomorrow. Actually.
Right, right.
And similar trend can be seen in case of the bilaterals in terms of trade agreement.
Yes. FTAs.
We have
and-
FTAs,
Yeah.
all kinds of the comprehensive economic agreement which everybody is signing, this notwithstanding the fact that we have WTO
Absolutely.
in place.
Sure, which is there as the watchdog,
Not
right?
very successful multilateral body.
Sure.
Now coming to GST, I think
Right.
GST is an issue in which I think this, of course, initiated. As soon as the goods come in, they are taxed, at the entry gate itself, which is something new in the Indian scenario.
Right.
Earlier, what was happening was you import some item, and I think at the stage of import there was no indirect tax except the custom duty which was really levied.
Right.
And most of the people were creating new firms and everything was not getting subject to the sale tax or VAT or any other levy except the countervailing duty which was collected, the custom
Yes.
duty. Now the GST coming in, this has actually changed the scenario. And even the international provision of services in terms of electronic services
Right.
also, GST is very clear about it that
How to
if
handle
you are
it,
using
yeah.
the services, you have to actually maybe pay it on reverse charge basis.
RCM,
Because
absolutely.
that is what they
Yes,
could really
yes.
do maximum because they cannot really impose tax on a country outside India that
Sure.
easily.
You cannot
so
police
ultimately
it.
tax is being paid by the Indian person.
Yes.
And I don't know whether government is really getting out of it. They might have to think over some other novel idea as to how to really tax that. Although because it is created outside India but it's sold in India.
Yeah.
So maybe I think direct tax is not enough
Right.
unless the India is able to tax indirect tax on the provider of services. Right now we are actually taxing the receiver of services.
Yes, it's RCM.
I think this is a
right?
big challenge actually, no?
It's a challenge.
How to do that research needs to be done and people like Shailendra ji and I think other people, Rishabh, I think you can possibly throw
Yeah,
light on
contribute.
it as to what can be
Contribute.
done so that we can directly
Yeah.
tax Googles of this world.
Yes.
Like equalization levy also, somebody was telling yesterday that equalization levy is collected from the receiver of service.
Yes.
Yes.
You are not in any case able
Going
to
back-
tax the provider of service.
It has
Same
not
thing is
served
happening
the
with
full
GST.
purpose.
Yes.
So it is only the first initiative this time has come on significant economic presence that you are going to tax the provider of service.
Yes.
And one more
So
area.
what is the globally, what is the threshold? I mean, if you look at this significant economic presence, it talks about the
The
amendment in the
threshold,
bill that the two parameters which they are going to apply, one is of revenue, another is of users. So normally for exemption, what is the threshold worldwide?
I don't know whether you can really say there are no ground rules of this because this is a game of ultimately who is able to actually negotiate better.
Yes.
And I think so far OECD has been able to negotiate tremendously well. And there is another lobby of, you can say, the Americans and the Europeans. Americans and Europeans normally go together.
Right.
And they give too much leverages to each other, the same leverages they don't give outside. When you see treaties between countries like Europe and America, they'll give you so many advantages if you are a permanent resident or a citizen, not permanent, but if you're a citizen of Europe, then America will give you some advantages
Right.
that limitation of benefit protocols are
Yes,
structured
the LOB.
accordingly.
Right.
So this is ultimately, political issue as well as economic issue both. So I don't think you can really have ground rules which can
That is to be notified by the CBDT later.
Yes.
But going back to GST, the international experience, I mean,
Right,
you have
right.
seen how the GST has evolved in India in the
Sure,
last 6-7 months. You have also seen it is being implemented in the UAE, Malaysia, of course, you have
Yeah,
seen.
yeah.
So what has been your experience?
You
And
know,
your comment about Indian design of GST.
Right. If you look at the concept of VAT, I mean, it was in the 50s. In fact, it was first, put forward by a guy called von Siemens 100 years ago. He was a German industrialist.
yes.
And he said, let's do it because Germany needed the money. Of course, never happened.
1922.
Yes, and then in 54, that's when the French gentleman introduced
Yes,
VAT.
right.
So the EU has looked at it for over 60 years, and they're still looking at it. So they were the first batch, I believe, on GST or VAT, as you call it. Then the new batch is the Australians and the Malaysians, the Singaporeans. They came with a different view. Principles were the same, but they made things a little bit easier. Now we are fortunate now that India has come in the third batch, assuming it's the third batch, and the UAE has also followed it, right?
Right.
The difference I see in the UAE is that because they've had the benefit of best practice and the fact that they're very technologically savvy, which is where I think we should talk about technology, because they've been able to do what they did in 2 years because of technology. This is the only reason. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. So Malaysia was also, I mean, I've been there when they had service tax, and when they put in VAT, they did have problems. And I think one of the issues there was anti-profiteering. Basically, mainly that was a big issue, right? And they brought in laws, and they were prosecuting people. The UAE is threatening to do that too, although they haven't got a formal law. But they're saying, look, we'll prosecute. And I think that was 5% is quite small, but it's affecting the common people.
Right.
So that is, I think the difference between all of this is the GCC has a need to do it because the oil prices have dropped and the government is pushing it. And they make it easy for business. This is, I think, very important.
Okay.
Because business are contributing towards, they are your collectors, right?
Right.
You have to make life easy for them. Then you'll get a collection. So that's the overall macro view.
So what is the threshold there in UAE?
375,000 dirhams, which is about $100,000.
100,000.
Throughout the GCC.
Okay.
That's a GCC, it's a level at the GCC. And it's quite low. Huh? I mean, $100,000 for businesses in the GCC is quite low.
Quite low. Okay.
Even the newspaper man will probably meet the threshold, right?
Okay. So they want every citizen to contribute.
I think so.
Even the food items, everything is taxable.
Yes, it is.
Even food items.
Everything.
Yeah, there's no
There is
exemptions.
very few exemptions.
No.
Which is not the case either in case of Malaysia or even in India for that
I
matter.
think India is a completely different
Yes,
experience.
it's
You see,
different.
if you see, India is the only federal country which has been able to bring GST or VAT, you may call it.
Yes.
Of course, here the name is given as goods and services tax or good and simple tax, whatever you may call it.
Yeah.
But Indian experience is very peculiar because India has so much variety of population.
Correct.
Very poor, people who are not able to make two ends meet, and very, very affluent people also.
Right.
Maybe more affluent than many others. So this balancing was definitely necessary.
Yeah.
People have been talking about why not one rate, why 4 rates or why 5
Yes,
rates.
yes.
I think this has been debated by people who really don't understand India. Because India is not here to copy any international country. You know?
Right.
We have to see our own problems. So we can't tax at the same rate daily needs at the rate at which we are going to tax our Mercedes car or maybe
Sure.
you know, the rates have to be bound to be different. And cigarette and other sin things as we call it are bound to be
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
much higher pedestrian. Maybe tobacco or what.
Absolutely
Not only
correct,
28% plus also
Yeah.
cess also.
State compensation.
So-
In fact, what sir is saying is correct because India is the only federal unitary system which has adopted GST. US, despite being an advanced economy, doesn't have a unitary system of goods and service. They still have a separate one for on sale of goods.
They have central excise.
Central excise,
Yes.
service tax, sales tax. So it has actually, it has taken a lot of political will to get this structural reform. So it is very easy always to find faults in a system. But then look at the kind of overhaul that has been going on for the last 8 months.
So the beautifully it has been designed.
Yes,
You see,
exactly.
a lot of people had this apprehension that maybe credits may get stuck.
Right,
But I think
right.
in most of the situation, 90-95% situations, credits are not getting stuck. And you know, that way seamless credit is happening.
Exactly.
Except barring few cases only where you know the input tax is more and the output tax is lower. There in any case government is talking in terms of providing refunds.
Yes.
But so beautifully designed in spite of two parallel taxes running earlier, you know, there was the apprehension why two taxes, the state tax separate and central tax separate, how will it happen, and how will people, why the very purpose will go away when you have two taxes. But I think it is the way it is designed. I think credit goes to
Right.
I
those
think Vinod
bureaucrats
ji
and those politicians who have drafted such a
Vinodji
good
has
law.
seen a lot more tax reforms than any of us.
Yes.
I don't know of any tax reform, even a small tax reform, which has come which didn't face any kind of teething problem.
Yeah. So now
We
if
will term all
to
these
talk
as
about
teething problem,
technology,
which will be sorted out with some time. Of course, there will be variation whether some goods will be taken in the 5% bracket, 12% bracket, 18% bracket, or 28% bracket. But these are things which are still
That
evolving.
can be always
I think we should ask
rationalized,
Rishabh because I think main
Yeah,
problem in
he's-
GST currently
So,
are failing is the technology.
technology.
I'll talk about it because when the GST draft, model draft was discussed, everybody was talking about real-time invoicing. And worldwide, even Spain, Italy, Australia, Malaysia, everybody is now thinking on real-time invoicing. And what does it mean? That the moment your business cut the invoice, it should hit the server instead of at the end of the month or at the end of the 3 month. And that is where the some teething problem we are facing with the server, that people are not able to upload and all. But eventually India will also move to that, and that will be like, tracking of goods. We have e-way bill provisions which are coming up. For every movement we have a reverse charge mechanism beautifully capturing the economy which is informal, which has to be formalized. Ultimately, more taxpayer, more wide tax base, the tax rates will collapse, tax rates will go down, and that is how everybody will contribute to the growth of the nation. Now, technology, if it is made real time, then there will be no pressure on the servers on the system, because then we have a software which is connected. OECD has given a model wherein they have defined that how a tax accounting software or an ERP software has to work. Most of the ERP softwares don't follow that model because there is no compulsion. But if any country in the world will move to that holistically, then our audits will become truly e-audits, because then the file generated will be tamper-proof. So then all those things, it will take time. So what I am saying that technologically, the architecture what we designed, we have created GSPs and ASPs. But at this moment, these cylinders are not being fired fully because there are API issues and all. But ultimately, once everything is sorted out, then a lot of data is newfound oil. Everybody knows, if even for a business, if he has a data, business decisions can be wiser. If the government will have data, the government policy decisions will not be based on the gut, it will be based on the data.
On a technology issue, Rishabh, the major problem people are facing is that the GSTN network is getting choked near the last date, or when e-way bill you want to upload, you are not able to upload.
Yes.
I think this lesson to learn from this is primarily that let us go step by step. Yes. We aimed for a very good law, excellent law. But too good is too early to happen actually. So we have to give it time and do it stage-wise is better. We're talking of a completely make it current that as soon as you raise invoice, it gets uploaded on the system. Yeah. That maybe 5 years from now, it cannot come so quickly in India.
No, but Rishabh, has anybody done it?
Which one? Real-time invoicing?
The real-time uploading.
So real-time invoicing is there in China. If you see China as a country, like they have this tax wherein the software is controlled by the government. So same way.
So the government is providing software.
The government can provide, or government can make some guidelines that every software company who is registered, like for example
But China had a black box system, you may recall it initially. They started with that, based on the Korean experience.
Yes.
Even in GCC, Dubai has recommended in October 2017, they have recommended that any software vendor who want to register with them, and eventually they will move to that once they are stabilized, has to have some basic tenets of the software, which government will make mandatory. Yes. If that happens, then...
You see, the problem with the GST world is that good number of countries which have implemented it, they are not sharing their experience. For instance, China. Yes. I have done a lot of research on China. I find the Chinese are reticent, they are quiet, they follow Buddha and they keep quiet. they have not shared anything, any input on this. To what extent this has really helped, either in terms of increase in the compliance cost, in terms of elasticity in the revenue collection. What is it which they have gained?
So I'll give a very interesting example. Brazil, equally complex indirect tax system. Recently they have appointed an independent agency, and one of the Indian professional is helping the Brazilian government to go for the real-time invoicing. So they have relied on Indian IT expertise and plus the tax expertise. So they want to develop something which is, which will remove the complexity and bring ease of doing business, because every government is now pushing themselves for ease of doing business because they want to attract more and more investments.
Correct.
So I think that is the
although
key.
this doesn't look that difficult when people are actually ready to implement this. Yeah. You see the entire capital market in India, the way it is operating through electronically, everything in real time, current, a unique client code and so many things.
And it is wonderfully it is happening. Our ticketing
all this
system
can happen, but I think this also took to capital market 5 years to 10 years to really come to this level.
That is where people have to have patience. That it will work. Ultimately, we have best IT implementation in our stock markets, as sir said. Then we have our corporate affairs, then ticketing system. IRCTC ticketing system is considered to be one of the best in the world.
And look at what it was 10 years back.
The volume they handled.
They started.
So what do you think? What went wrong then in that case? So we have an example like IRCTC. Yes. What happened? What went wrong with the GST network?
So maybe technology outreach, the kind of knowledge to the last mile, and the training to have the comfort with the technology, maybe a lot of things can be done, and it's happening every day, it's improving, and this is all like settling problem.
I think I feel differently. What happened? I think that's the question which is troubling everybody. Right. Why this is not able to work? Right. Why GST is not able to work? There are 2-3 reasons for this. As I see, the law is new. It came on 1st July this year. and law is settling down. There are 1,000 changes in last 6 months which has been done actually.
Right.
So when you see so many changes coming in, implementing that into a new software,
Yes.
that software itself was new.
Takes time, yes.
And secondly, the GST, the way the law was originally framed, the law is so good to be true. You know, they actually drafted the law to expect everything in the world possible. You know, you want the moon that's to start with. You know, they wanted to do invoice-wise debit note, invoice-wise credit notes, you know, whatnot.
Correct.
And invoice-to-invoice matching. And, you know, you file sales return separately, purchase return separately, final return separately, and then an annual return separately, making too many returns, and then invoice matching. So, of course, that means architecture was very, very huge.
Yes.
And ultimately, such a huge architecture India has not seen.
Yes.
I think when you talk in terms of ticketing and when you talk in terms of capital market also, it is not that
See,
huge.
And I'll give you a small example.
Rishabh, you are a technology
transporters.
expert.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us something about the kind of number of invoices which are to be uploaded in GSTR1? It's more than 4 to 5 billion.
So
Right.
So 7.5
Imagine the kind of
terabit
data
of
which
data.
is to be uploaded.
Exactly.
And then you say that you are issuing credit note and debit note, and it has to be vis-a-vis the specific invoice number.
And I am now giving you another insight that invoices say 300, 400 crore, but when it comes to e-way bill will be even much more, 3 to 4 times more, because every time the truck will change, e-way bill number will change and the e-way bill character
So
will
that
change.
is why e-way bill did not survive
Yes.
even the 24
Right.
hours.
So now if you see
GST will survive at least for a few months.
and that too from transporters who were earlier always in the protection shield of reverse charge.
Correct.
So they came on in forward charge now, but now they have to follow the e-way bill also. So
Right.
this all transformation will take time. But technology with the common portal, with the mobile application, India is the only country with 900 people who are using mobile with smart data. And thanks to some companies who have actually made it possible for the last mile. Now with this, we have, I believe, I am optimistic in that way that people will actually go very fast if it is on their mobile set. And if it is easy.
Maybe Clarence can tell us a little more about it, that from outside India,
Yes.
what are those key spots of troubles for the GST in India?
You see, my first comment here on technology is let's not go for a Rolls Royce.
Okay.
Let's go for a basic Beetle first.
Okay.
Man landed on the moon at Apollo 11 or 12, and there were 10 Apollos before it, right? We have to learn. I mean, we are human, there's evolution.
Correct.
So I think the ultimate aim that Rishabh talks about is great, because it's the ultimate thing. You have to go step by step, which I agree, right? Even the US, which is so technologically advanced, they still have problems on automation and the rest. I mean, some of the European countries are highly, Sweden and the rest of them, the Scandinavian countries are highly automated, high bandwidth, but even they have issues. And it has to be because there's one human intervention. And even when you talk about robotics and AI and this thing, they're never going to replace us. I mean, whatever you
So
say.
there is
right?
one more challenge in the Indian framework. You see,
Right.
not only the technology, the way the law is provided,
Right.
you may create the bandwidth, you may create
Correct,
the
everything.
logics,
Yeah.
but the Indian people.
Yes.
Indian people don't work like Americans. No, Americans work, you tell them you go this way, they will go this
Yes,
way.
time and
but when
motion
you want him
studies.
to go to, suppose from here to you, to
Right.
your table,
Right.
he may not go straight. He may
Yes.
go via him, he may
look
go
for
via him, he
jugaad.
may go beyond.
We look for jugaad.
So, so that way, all kind of manipulative,
Yes.
as well as, we call it financial engineering practices, which really actually get involved.
No, I see what you're saying. No, I agree.
But
Yeah.
also
yeah.
one other aspect also is, as you rightly pointed, to take your argument forward. India, most of the traders or people who are being impacted for the first time under GST may not be that technologically advanced. So the moment you ask them that you need to file every form online, everything has to be done online,
Yeah.
that seems to be the trouble for the entire system not working.
So here I also feel differently.
No. I think, sir, with time, things will definitely work out. Because 20 years back, maybe many of the people don't know how to email. But ultimately now, everybody is doing it. So technology will pick up with time, with training. Only the government has to keep on allowing. Like whenever GSTIN is failing, another scope is being given by opening the portal. As long as that continues at least for 6 months to 1 year, where people are allowed to rectify the mistake, or if they have not been in a position to file to again refile it, I think
Actually, there is a structural issue. When in the GST design, they kept a provision of GSP, GST Suvidha provider, and ASP application service provider, and they were supposed to provide the value-added services and the features to the assessee to do the ease of doing their filing and all. Now, in this entire episode, so many changes, so many these people are actually not gone into the system. Once they will come, a lot of easy things they will provide.
I told the day one, somewhere in the month of May last year, I told the people who were taking decisions that this ASP and GSP are not going to work. There's a typical mindset. People don't want a middleman between them and the government.
Right. Yes. Right.
You want to hire a ASP first, then you hire another GSP first, and then upload this. And they'll show you many things. I told the government very clearly that you need to design your system so that it works. You see, the experience of filing income tax return has been so good.
Yes.
Filing a MC has been
because
so good.
It was direct.
And earlier you see the TDS return was going through a service provider. Nobody liked in India, and ultimately government has to really go to a direct filing of TDS also. All these intermediaries have gone away.
Yes.
So obviously after having this experience, I think because government need to provide the software which can talk to other softwares.
Agree.
My accounting software should be able to talk to. There are only 4 or 5 major software. Tallies of this world. We have the 2-3 major ERPs. It is not something really very great. But when you involve an intervening ASP or somebody, it creates.
Right, but as a reason we keep on saying GST software everywhere.
Yeah. In fact, even we have released a white paper on 36 parameters which a GSP ASP should follow, because people don't know about data privacy and data security, and there are so many issues involved. Once we use a third-party software, some errors, who will be responsible, third-party liabilities if there is non-compliance, overpayment, less payment, so many issues.
So on this note, let me wrap it up and thank my 4 guests, for a wonderful insight into all this highly complex issues, which involves lots of socio-economic parameters. Ultimately, the tax behavior, the willingness to pay tax, it is not an easy willingness. It has to be educated, enforced, sensitized. Yes. So as Mr. Jain rightly suggested, that the good number of taxpayers, they don't like in between a bridge, a facilitation. Perhaps they want to have direct interface, with the taxman, and that is where, GST is facing some trouble here in India, because the procedure was made so complex, so elaborate, that it could not have been done by traders or small taxpayers. The threshold, as Mr. Clarence rightly suggested, like in UAE for instance, even in India, the threshold, good number of experts believe that it's low. Government of India may have its own logic and valid reason for this, but still, going by the different experts' viewpoint, it is slightly low. If we look at the technology side, Mr. Rishabh is very optimistic about it, that ultimately the GST will succeed in matching the outward and inward invoices, and that is the crux of the entire GST system worldwide, the ITC. So ITC will depend on this invoice matching. So looking at all these aspects, all of us are very optimistic that whatever problems or teething problems being faced by GST in India or abroad, it will settle down in a few months' time, and things will improve. Yes. Thanking you all for watching TIOL Tube.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.